Hi, welcome to the Get Strong and Healthy podcast. My name is Anna Clow. Thank you for being here. Today, we've got a special guest joining us, Nicole. Nicole and I met through a mastermind group that we are a part of, and we're like, hey, I have a podcast. You want to get on a podcast? Let's go ahead and make this happen and have a really awesome educational conversation about women's health, which is what we're going to dive into today. So, Nicole, I would love if you introduce yourself, share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and also I would love for you to dive into your story and how you got to where you are today.
I certainly will. So thanks for having me on. It's lovely to connect. And as far as my story goes, so I was telling you before we started recording, I have a background in competitive gymnastics. So I've always been very active in health and fitness. And after my gymnastics career ended, that's when my hormones started kicking in. Got my period around 14 years old, and it immediately came with very painful cramps. And my mom told me that's normal. It's just part of being a woman and having your period. You just have painful cramps. I had painful cramps, all my life, and that'll just make giving birth so much easier, is what she told me. So I didn't know anything else that, painful cramps were a sign of any kind of hormone imbalance. And so many times throughout my 4 years of high school, my cramps would be so severe if I didn't like take ibuprofen ahead of time and have a heating pad ready at school, I would get nauseous and sick at school, and my mom would have to come pick me up and I would go home, which is not fun for someone who actually liked school, and I was a very studious student and I didn't want to miss school. So I dealt with that all 4 years of high school, just getting sick and nauseous from cramps. And so when I was 18, I went on birth control for about 10 years. And the conversation with my doctor was simply like, I have really bad cramps. I don't want to deal with that while I'm in college. And my mom was also like, well, you're going to be in college. You're probably going to be dating more. It wouldn't hurt to be on birth control for safety reasons as well. And so my doctor didn't ask anything about lifestyle, diet, nothing that in regards to my hormones. She didn't even tell me that cramps weren't normal, that, we're not supposed to have cramps when we have our menstrual cycle, or if we do, like they should be very minimal. They shouldn't be so painful that you're getting nauseous. So came off birth control. Gosh, it was a year after I moved to California. So I was 20. And then a few years later, I started working with an online fitness coach. And I can't remember anything about my period health in those years. But in 2019, I started working with an online coach. And within a month of working with him, my period disappeared. And as someone who has always had a painful period, I was like, yes, no period. This is great. I was really happy. I did not see it as a red flag. And I thought my body was just adjusting to my nutrition and exercise protocol because for the first time since college, I was back in the gym weightlifting. And then he had me running 5 days a week, and I'm an overachiever. So, of course, I was running 7 days a week, doing intense cardio with 3 days of strength training. And my meal plan was 17 to 1800 calories. But, again, I'm an overachiever, and I was probably more in the 15 to 1600 range without realizing it because I didn't know any better. And so totally lost my period for a good 6 months. He wasn't concerned when I told him about it finally. He was like, well, if it happens next month, let me know. And I let him know, and he said nothing. I was like, well, okay, I guess we're not concerned, even though my doctor said it was a red flag. So once we parted ways, like menstrual cycle was back on track. But it was August 1st of 2020. I was out running errands. My period started. That was a Saturday. I went to the farmer's market and was just out and about, and I was driving on a busy road, and my cramps suddenly started getting so intense that I almost passed out while driving. And that's not normal. You should not be almost blacking out while you're driving a car because your cramps are so severe. So that was really the wake-up call for me to dive into my own hormone health. And I knew around that time a few things that I wanted to start health coaching. I just didn't know how to start getting into this coaching career, but it was something on my heart that I wanted to get into. And then was already becoming aware that period cramps were not normal. There was a girl I was following on YouTube, and she did a YouTube video about signs that your hormones are imbalanced. And when she said period cramps, I was like, oh, okay. So that started my journey of like finding books and trainings and whatnot, just people who were more of an expert on hormones than I was at the time. And it was around the end of 2020, beginning of 2021 that I finally I started my business and began health coaching. And it was around like that summer when I knew I was going to make hormones the focus of my business and really support women with their own menstrual cycles and their hormones because no one should pass out while driving. And then a few months later, I almost passed out in the shower from bad cramps. And that's also not a fun scenario when, it's a slippery bathtub and you don't want to fall and pass out. So that's kind of my hormone journey. That's what got me into health coaching and made hormones the focus. And I can say, like, ever since last June, I have had no issues with my period. It's been a few years of really working on my own personal health while I've been working with clients. And it's so nice when my period comes. I'm always like, all right, what's it going to be like this month?
Mhm.
And since last June, it's been every single month has been a breeze. So it's exciting.
That's freaking awesome. What a journey. And
Hmm.
that is like the definition of turning your pain into your purpose. So I love that so much. And the we were going to get into, okay, talking about what's, normal, what's not normal. And I think that cramps specifically are something that most women just think that they have to live with. And
Hmm.
that's just what comes with being a woman, and everyone, jokes about it online. And just because something is common doesn't mean that it's normal. And
Yeah.
so I would love to dive into a little bit more, like what else, what other, symptoms, what other things are not normal that maybe a lot of people think they are when it comes to our cycles.
Yeah. So definitely period cramps, not normal. If you have just like mild abdominal cramping, that's fine. Like if you feel a little something, but it's not painful and has you nearly passing out or curled up on the couch for a day, like that's what's not normal. Unfortunately, those symptoms have become normalized because so many women deal with it. So definitely cramps, PMS, not normal. Intense food cravings, also not normal. Bloating, not normal. What else am I missing? Energy crashes, like when our hormones drop right when our period starts. Yes, we're going to have a little bit lower energy, but you shouldn't be so exhausted that you need to spend all day on the couch and like you're so exhausted you can't do anything. That's not normal. Like my energy remains pretty stable now. Around my period, I might have a little bit of an energy dip on day one, but it's not as severe as it used to be. Heavy bleeding, that's another sign that your period isn't normal if you're bleeding through a tampon in an hour or, things like that. That's not good. Depression, anxiety around our period, not normal. There's things we can do with that. And then if your period is 3 days or less, that's not normal. Or if it's more than 5 days, that's also not the norm. And then if you're counting the days between your periods, it should be anywhere from like 25 to 32 days, I think is the normal range. If you're outside of that, or if one month you're at 21 days, another month you're at 35 days, and it's just, you can't predict your period, that's also not normal. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of those things have become normalized because a lot of women struggle with them. And we joke all the time about PMS and our mood swings. Like, we shouldn't be having crazy mood swings. Our husbands should not be telling us, like, you're PMSing right now. You're crazy. Like, that's not normal.
Yes. Yeah. And you mentioned bloating, and that's another one that I think, especially, I don't see it as much recently, but for a while on social media, the whole, body positivity and acceptance, and they would show like their bloated bellies and be like, this is normal.
Yep.
Don't feel bad about, X, Y, and Z. And there's a difference between, being full and, after like eating a meal versus like bloating. And I
Mhm.
think that so many people think that, oh yeah, like, me just having a big distended belly like this is just normal. It's just my life. And also when we deal with these things for so long, for, like our whole lives, what it feels like, then yeah, it becomes something where like, oh yeah, that's just how I am. When in reality, there's so much that we can do to get you into a better place with your health that you're not experiencing those things. So I
Yeah.
hope that that like kind of list was really eye-opening for some people, and I'm sure that it was. And so to like continue this conversation, let's dive into like what are the different phases of the menstrual cycle, diving in a little bit deeper of like what that looks like. I think it's really amazing to really understand that, to like better understand our bodies and sort of how things work. And then also we could talk about, just how to really support our bodies best through those different phases.
Yeah, absolutely. So the I like talking about the phases of our menstrual cycle to bring awareness of what's happening with your hormones from almost a week to week basis because there's little nuances that you might notice and it brings you back into being aware of your body. I think a lot of women have become so disconnected from their bodies because, oh, this is just normal. This is how it's always been for me. Or doctors slap birth control on the issue. And that completely disconnects you from the signals your body is giving you. So, with our menstrual cycle, there are two main phases, and we can break those phases down into smaller ones if we want to, but we have our follicular phase and our luteal phase. The follicular phase is around 2 weeks. For this scenario, we're just going to do like a 28-day cycle. And so follicular follicular phase, that can be a mouthful to say sometimes, is basically your first 2 weeks. Day one of your cycle starts on the day that you bleed. So the day your period begins is day one. And the follicular phase ends right at ovulation. So that's typically the first 2 weeks of your cycle. Within that phase, we have our menstrual phase, which lasts from like 4 to 7 days. That's our period. Then we kind of enter that follicular phase, and then we have ovulation, which is a very small window. It's like a day to 3 days that we are ovulating. And then after that, we enter phase two, which is the luteal phase. And this is our last 2 weeks of the cycle. So once we ovulate and our hormones peak, we begin the luteal phase, and that's when progesterone rises. In the first phase, estrogen is rising. Estrogen and testosterone are the two hormones that are rising, and then they peak around ovulation, and then progesterone begins to rise. And our last 2 weeks of the cycle are a time to kind of relax. Like you'll notice in the first 2 weeks, after your period's out of the way, like you'll notice your energy comes back a little bit more. Like, even though you should have steady energy during your period, it does drop a little bit. Like, that little bit is normal. You shouldn't completely crash. But you'll notice, like, oh, I feel energized again. I know during the first 2 weeks, I'm like, man, I'm looking lean. I feel stronger in the gym. I feel just more energetic and outgoing, more of a people person during the first 2 weeks. And then those second 2 weeks, I'm kind of like, oh, I want to like be inside and be cozy and, maybe plan out some things and just rest and relax a bit more, especially in that week leading up to your period. After progesterone peaks around day 21 and estrogen rises a little bit again at that point, both of your hormones drop off that last week. And so that's when you're kind of feeling like, oh, I just want to relax, or you might feel weaker at the gym. And that's pretty normal. Not everyone experiences that, but if you do experience that, just know it's because of your hormones fluctuating. And and yeah, that might be a week to limit the amount of inflammation in the foods that you're eating. So if you know that sometimes gluten can bother you or dairy or you're trying to watch sugar intake, like that week leading up to your period would be the week to limit some of those foods. In our follicular phase, we can handle carbs a little bit better because estrogen is very protective with and being anti-inflammatory. Progesterone, not so much. We need to give it a little bit of love. Maybe eating lower carb with higher fats is good. And then timing our carbs around certain things like exercise, which can be stressful, or having some carbs at night to help bring down cortisol so we can sleep so that melatonin can rise. Like there's some things we can do with carbs, but they're a little bit more strategic in the second half of your cycle. So that was a lot and it wasn't very organized, but that's kind of like
I found it, yeah, super organized, I felt. But yeah, that's really, really awesome. Just overview of the different phases and like what to expect. And I love that you mentioned like this is kind of what to expect. It's maybe not what to expect, but how to understand your body a little bit more and not to be like, oh, I'm expecting to feel like total crap. And, like I think that can be like a mindset that almost like amplifies the symptoms that you might be
Yeah.
feeling. But I'm curious, have you read the book Fast Like a Girl?
I haven't. I've heard of it though.
Yeah, so that's a book that I love and I definitely recommend is she talks all about fasting and so fasting generally has been only studied on men and has, shown to cause a lot of issues in women with just our hormonal health and everything if
Mhm.
you try and fast like a man. And
Yeah,
so fast
I
like
have a story about that.
yeah, so fast like a girl is really it's all about how to fast as a woman and how different, during different phases of the cycle, how we need to really focus on like hormone feasting foods and how different, parts we can do more like a ketobiotic type of, method and just like how all of that sort of plays together. So it's definitely a good book if anyone's interested. But I'd love to hear your story on fasting.
Yeah. So during 2019, when I was working with that online coach and lost my period, one of his techniques that he used for himself, he's a man, so his hormones are very different than mine, was if I was going to have some sort of cheat meal or cheat day, I needed to intermittent fast that day. So skip breakfast, break your fast at lunch, make it like a big salad with a lot of protein, and then like go all out on your cheat meal for dinner. And then there were times where like maybe I wouldn't fast in the morning, but I would, have a cheat meal and then I would punish myself, so to speak, with fasting the next day. And I just started taking fasting to an extreme, probably another reason why my period disappeared and never came back. And I've really had to unlearn that mindset of essentially punishing myself for fasting, or if I indulge a little bit more to like not fast that day or the day after. And I've really had to unlearn that. And like the past 2 weekends, I've had weekends where I've been a little off track with eating, and I'm currently cutting leading up to spring break and summer. And the past few weeks, I haven't made any progress on the scale because my weekends have just been kind of out of my control food wise. And I was telling a private community that I have that's following along with my fat loss journey. I told them on Sunday or Monday, I'm like, okay, I have made no progress on my weight like the past 2 weeks, but it's okay. The food has been a little out of my control on the weekend. I said, but like I am being very vulnerable. It's very, very tempting on Monday of this week to just slash my calories or fast or go back into those old habits. And I'm like, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to trust that just getting back into my normal eating routine is going to help. And I ate like 2,100 calories that day, which is a little bit lower than what I'm aiming for right now, but still sufficient, I think. And then the next day, my weight was down. I was like, see, I didn't have to slash my calories to 1,500 and intermittent fast and be miserable. I just needed to give my body a day to recover.
Look at that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's so powerful from a like physiological like body perspective to not do that, but also I think so much from a mindset perspective too and like relationship with food, which I just did a whole like episode all on relationship to food, but there's so many parts of that where I think it can be
Yeah.
unhelpful.
I
You
noticed
know,
myself binging in 2019. I
yeah.
mean, because I was restricting so much, he wouldn't allow me to eat dessert. It was like the only chocolate was in your protein shake, and then I had to have tea at night instead of something for dessert. I mean, it was awful. And so there was a lot of restrict binging happening that year, and I've had to very intentionally unlearn that.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely relate to you with over restricting when I started my journey. I thought, oh, I can never eat sugar again,
Yeah.
like a dessert again. And so then that led me to just binge eating,
Yeah.
behaviors. But
He
yeah,
made
it's
me afraid
definitely
of fruit. he made me afraid to eat fruit.
Hey, oh my,
Yeah.
really? That's
Yeah. Like you
crazy.
can't have fruit past noon because it has sugar in it. I mean, so there was no like yogurt parfaits, like Greek yogurt and with protein powder with like some berries for dessert because I could not eat fruit after lunch.
Yeah, the amount of horror stories I hear about just bad coaches, I'm like, where are these guys? I want to have a conversation with you because I hear this all the time
Yeah.
and it creates such a bad rap in the coaching industry and unfortunately I feel like for a lot of people creates like a fear of even hiring another coach, even if they have, way better education, totally different
Yeah.
philosophies. It just creates this really like negative connotation with health and fitness, which I think is so,
Oh
so
yeah.
harmful.
Yeah. It was, I didn't see how bad it was when I was in the thick of it because I was getting all these amazing results. I look back on pictures now and I'm like, why did no one tell me that I looked too thin, that I looked unhealthy? I mean, it was bad. So I'm in a much better place now and it's amazing.
We love it. We love it. So
Yeah.
I want to hear a little bit more, if we could dive a little deeper into birth control and why that like isn't necessarily the solution and just a little bit more information on that because again, that's another thing that is very quickly slapped on every woman. Oh, you have cramps. Here, take birth control. Oh, you're having, XYZ acne. Here's birth control. It's like, hello,
Yeah.
let's think about the root cause, but I'd love to hear a little bit more from you of just your take and your thoughts on birth control.
Yeah. So when I went on birth control at 18, there was no conversation with my doctor about potential side effects of being on birth control for a long time. No conversations about how it could affect my gut health or the minerals in my body, like nothing. It was just like, here's your prescription for birth control. Be on your merry way and have fun. It was just like, okay. Knowing what I know now, if someone wants to go on birth control for birth control reasons, that is her decision. But I want women to be educated about the potential side effects of birth control and that it's actually not addressing the root cause of your period problems at all. So, what birth control does is it keeps you from ovulating. So, you don't have a period. And that is, I mean, I don't think that's good because then you're losing the communication between your brain and your ovaries because it's suppressing your natural hormone fluctuations that we have throughout the month. It's just keeping them stable and nothing's happening. You're not ovulating. And so your brain and ovaries aren't communicating and your hormones aren't doing anything because you're taking synthetic hormones that are suppressing your natural hormones so that you don't ovulate, which is the crux of your menstrual cycle. And so you're losing that ability to be in touch with your body. Your period is your fifth vital sign. It's very valuable feedback for your health. And taking birth control just suppresses your hormones and it does nothing to address, well, why were your hormones imbalanced in the first place? And that's where you need to get to the root cause. And so with clients, I look at gut health and the minerals in their body because birth control will deplete minerals in your body. Minerals create enzymes and enzymes create your hormones. So if you don't have the raw materials that your hormones need, then good luck with your hormones being imbalanced. And then gut health, if your gut is a mess, if you have gut infections or bacterial overgrowth, like you might not be absorbing the nutrients and minerals that you need because it's not what you eat, it's what you absorb. And so we need to make sure gut health is on point so that you are absorbing the nutrients and minerals that your hormones need to be in balance. And birth control doesn't do any of that. It just sticks a band-aid on it and is like, okay, well, now that you're not ovulating, you're not going to have a period and you won't see deal with the symptoms, but you come off birth control because you want to get pregnant or you're tired of paying for it and being on it. And everything, all the symptoms you were experiencing are going to come back because nothing was addressed and they were just allowed to continue to fester under the surface. And you're just putting more time between actually getting to the root cause of your
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
So that's my spiel on birth control. But know what you're getting into. Like there are side effects to taking birth control for a long time. It does affect your gut health. It does affect your minerals. It even changes your pheromones. And like, there's some crazy stories out there about what birth control can do to women. Just educate yourself. I recommend the book Beyond the Pill by Dr. Jolene Brighton. It's eye-opening when it comes to birth control.
Yeah, I feel like I know what you're referencing is the type of men that you're attracted to. Is that what you're referencing? Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I personally felt that on
Mhm.
it and I came off of it in 2022 and
Mhm.
or no, 2020, sorry. And for the past, I mean, I'm still dealing with issues from it. I had to, I worked with a women's health coach. I was in the worst place I'd ever been in with my health. And at that point, I'd been into fitness for years and years, and I'd, thought I was so like fit and healthy. And then you come off of the pill, and oh my gosh, I gained ton of weight. I was dealing with really intense symptoms. I had crazy cravings, no energy, insane
Mhm.
brain fog, and I was at such a loss and really, really frustrated. And it's been a long healing journey for me, and I'm still on this healing journey. And I just wish that I had that education, before going on it at such a young age. And
Same.
I've heard this a few times, which I can resonate with, is like, oh, I feel fine on it. I feel great. I didn't have any symptoms of, you don't have, cramps or nothing like that. And so you think, oh, no, I feel great. It's like, no, after you come off, that is
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
all hell often breaks loose. I didn't get my
Mhm.
period for almost a year. I think that's a
Mhm.
little bit of an outlier, and I could have better supported my body coming off of it. But a lot of
Mhm.
women really, really struggle with, their sex hormones and regulating those coming off of it. And there's just so many downstream negative effects that, not that everyone can't go on it, or there aren't certain cases where, it might make sense, talking with your doctor about it, but just like being educated and informed, I think is,
Yeah.
you said, extremely important.
Yeah, it's not the solution for every single hormone or period problem, but unfortunately, that's what doctors are taught. Like, oh, you have painful cramps, just take birth control. Oh, we need to regulate your cycle because you can't predict when your period's coming. Just go on birth control. It'll regulate your hormones or your cycle. It's like, no, your hormones are doing nothing because it's suppressing them and you're not ovulating. It's not regulating anything. I mean,
Yes.
the reason why people might see their acne clear up or things like that is because your hormones aren't doing anything. And so it's you don't have those fluctuations that are causing your symptoms. And so when that's suppressed, your symptoms go away and you think birth control works, but you come off birth control and like you said, have so many issues. I don't remember having issues when I came off birth control, but like I said, from the time I came off birth control in 2019, I don't remember anything about my period health. So I
Yeah.
was not paying attention. I was not aware.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And some of it too, I feel like in hindsight, I didn't even know how bad I felt. Like I didn't
Mhm.
know that, how I was feeling was really, really not normal, and how good I could, feel.
Mhm.
But yeah, just as like a side note for everyone listening, is typical Western medicine, a lot of doctors is, you when you go to them with an issue, they're oftentimes trained and okay, here's the medication to, fix that. Whereas going through like a holistic, functional practitioner or, functional medicine doctor, like that is really about addressing the root cause. And so just keeping that in mind that, if a doctor isn't asking you about your lifestyle or, your nutrition, which most aren't trained in nutrition at all, or very, very small amounts. And so just keeping that in mind when it comes to your own like advocacy for your health and, the steps that you take moving forward.
Yeah, I saw something, I think on Instagram the other day. And it really resonated with me that when you take your pet to the vet because they're not feeling well, one of the first things the vet will ask you is, what are you feeding your dog or your cat? And you tell them the brand of food and is it kibble or wet food or is it or like you explain what you're feeding to your pet because that might give them some insight into some things that could be improved on. When you go to the doctor, do they ever ask you like, what does a typical day of eating look like for you? Not at all. They don't ask about that. They don't ask about sleep. They don't ask, like, well, what stress is going on in your life? What does your exercise routine look like? They aren't asking those questions typically. If you do have a doctor in the Western medicine system that is asking you those questions, amazing. Keep that doctor. But if not, find a new doctor.
Yes. Yeah, that's such a good analogy. I've never actually like thought to connect that of, the vet versus like what they ask us. That's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah, I took my cat to the vet at the end of January and we had to go through like what I feed her and the
Yeah.
brand, type of food. And I don't ever remember a doctor asking me what I
Yeah.
eat.
Me neither. And that's like the kind of the foundation or one of the
I
huge
know.
foundations of everything. Uh,
Yeah, but from my understanding, doctors aren't taught nutrition in medical school. It's like it might be a chapter or a few hours of their education, and that's it.
yeah, absolutely. Like even if
Bad.
they could, simply like refer someone out to, hey, you should go to a nutrition coach or a dietitian or whatever it is, I think that would be awesome. But a lot of them don't even say a
Yeah.
word about it. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so let's dive into, okay, what do we do instead of birth control? How do we address the root cause issues and how can we improve our health? Like, let's kind of have this high level conversation. And obviously, it's very case dependent and it depends, and we can't necessarily solve your problems, you listening here today specifically. But I think just giving a nice overview to kind of start this conversation will really help point people in the right direction.
Absolutely. So there's, I think, some principles that all women can follow to help improve their hormones and their period health. But like you said, I mean, it's really going to depend on the person because all of our bodies are different. All of our life experiences and just everything is so different. And so our hormones are going to look different. And so I think some big movers that women can implement. First one is making sure you are eating meals that are going to keep your blood sugar balanced. And that looks like, I always like saying, don't ever leave a carb naked. Always have your carb with a protein and fat source, even if you're having a snack. Because if you are constantly spiking your blood sugar, that is creating stress on your body. So cortisol is activated. And if cortisol is never getting a chance to come down because your blood sugar is never coming down, then that spills over into your sex hormones. Your sex hormones are very, very sensitive to stress. And that cycle of insulin and cortisol and all of that just becoming a mess, your sex hormones are going to be like, all right, it's really stressful in here. We're not going to prioritize reproduction very well. And you might have a lot of period issues from that. So definitely making sure your meals have, I tell my clients at least 30 grams of protein, 30 to 40. We should be eating 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight if you're at your goal weight or your goal weight. So 1 gram per pound of protein of your goal weight. So it just depends on where you are in your health journey and if you have a weight loss goal or not. So at least 30 grams of protein with every meal, and then every snack you eat should also include sufficient amount of protein. I love Greek yogurt for that. But making sure you have your protein, a healthy fat source, a lot of times that's built into your protein if you're having like chicken thighs or a steak or something like that, or cooking in butter or olive oil. Avocado is also great. Full fat dairy and nuts and seeds and all of that are great sources of healthy fats. Coconut as well. And then have your carbs, but make sure they're, more complex carbs and not the sugary sweet ones. Save that as a treat. I'm a dessert girly, so I try to save my sweet stuff for for nighttime when I have dessert. And that's when I treat myself just a little something every night because that keeps me sane. And I don't feel like I'm restricting, so it helped me to break that binge restrict pattern. But even when I have dessert, I have it right after dinner because I've had my protein, my fats, my healthy carbs, and fiber as well. You want to make sure you're eating enough fiber. And when you do that, then your blood sugar is going to remain more stable. So that would be a big one because in this society, I feel like a lot of us are dealing with blood sugar regulation or dysregulation, and I know mine could probably be better too. I just haven't been brave enough to stick myself with a needle yet to test it every day, even though I have the kit sitting in my closet at home. So I would say blood sugar is a big one. Next one, making sure you are prioritizing sleep because sleep can also mess with your blood sugar the next day. If you find like on a night when you're sleep deprived, the next day you're probably craving all your carbs and all the sugar because it's going to give you the energy spike that you feel like you need. And so be aware of that. If you are always craving sweet foods, then check to make sure you're eating enough protein, but also look at your sleep. I mean, are you sleeping throughout the night or do you wake up in the middle of the night? Is it taking you a while to fall asleep? Are you getting enough deep sleep? And so we really want to work on our sleep habits and being off technology before bed, which is sometimes easier said than done, and investing in blackout curtains or dimming the lights in your home. There are so many things we can do to support our sleep in the morning and at night. Even getting sunlight in the morning can really support our sleep and our circadian rhythm. So working on sleep. Easier said than done. We all know it's important, but sometimes we don't prioritize it as much as we should. And then I would also say strength training is going to be huge in regulating your hormones. Again, like we can tie that back into blood sugar because then the glucose has somewhere to go and like it's being shuttled into your muscles and it's being used in the way it expects to be used in your body. And the more muscle we have on our body, it's very protective. It helps balance all of your hormones. It's anti-aging. There's so many benefits to strength training. And then you get to feel strong and like badass and all of that as a woman. And it's super empowering being one of the only girls in the weight room with the guys. And I'm like, yeah, I feel strong. So
Yes.
I love the benefits, the hormone benefits of strength training. But then like I would say those three are going to be huge for a lot of women. And then just overall focusing on your stress, especially nervous system regulation. If you are dealing with any sort of like little or big T trauma, or you are just always a stress ball, finding ways to really calm down your body through meditation or breath work, going outside to take a walk without your phone with you, or just doing something to calm your body down and really getting into a parasympathetic state. Those four things are really going to help. And then beyond that, getting into the root cause is going to look like, you know, gut health and getting your gut tested. It's more than just like going to the doctor and they are like scoping your GI tract. You really want to do a stool sample and get a GI map done to look, do you have parasites? Do you have gut infections? Do you have bacterial overgrowth? What's your immune system like? And that GI map is really valuable. And then I also do an HTMA test with my clients, which looks at the minerals in their body. Because again, I said earlier, minerals create enzymes and enzymes create your hormones. So we need to see like, are you losing minerals too fast or are your minerals so depleted that you're barely making your hormones? And so we need to support your minerals, but then we need to make sure your gut is going to be absorbing those minerals to bring your hormones back into balance. But with those two, those are going to be more root cause. And I use functional lab testing for that because I'd rather test and not guess what's going on with my clients. But
Yeah.
I'd say those are the things to do. And within all of that, there's like little tips and tricks and things you can eat and drink and different things to implement to support your hormones. And liver health is going to be another thing too when I think of root cause because your liver detoxes the estrogen.
Yep.
So detox pathways are also going to be really important. So there's a lot that goes into balancing your hormones if you haven't caught on with that, but it's really going to be dependent from person to person. But I would say the first four can do a lot. And then beyond that, if you want to get deeper into the root cause, that's where we look at gut, minerals, liver support, supporting your lymphatic system, making sure you're pooping every day as well. I mean, it's so important and it all ties together. So,
Yeah, there's so many things where I'm like, we could do a full episode on that. We could do a full episode on that.
yeah.
There's so much to go deep with people. And I think that it's really important we have these conversations because I think a lot of people aren't even aware
Mhm.
that, these are things that we can do and these are tests that we can run and these are protocols that we can run for you that are going to specifically target these issues and how like deep and specific they can go. And yeah, I think it's really important because because there are solutions and there are ways that we can get you into optimizing your health, and you don't
Yeah.
have to deal with these, symptoms and, be in a suboptimal place. I always like, it's funny too, when we were talking about the doctors, it's the same
Hmm.
thing with testing. When you go and ask them, hey, can I run a GI map? They're like, well, you're not dying, so like, no, like they are very, there's different tests that I have had clients ask them to run, and they're like, why? No, and they make it really hard. And so I think that if you're someone who wants to go from maybe not like sick to fine, but like from maybe quote unquote fine or suboptimal to optimal, that's where you really have to take your health into your own hands and hire, a functional health coach, be able to just go down this process in that way and just really see how you can optimize things.
Yeah. And it might seem like a lot or like it's going to take longer. Birth control seems easier. You just pop a pill every day or you get an IUD and you don't have to think about it. But again, it's not really addressing the reason why your hormones were imbalanced and a mess in the first place. And you're only prolonging getting to the root cause, where if you do that now, you're actually, especially if you're in your 20s and 30s, then that's going to make your 40s and 50s and beyond so much easier as you transition through perimenopause into menopause if you take care of your hormones now. Like the sooner the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nicole, for this awesome conversation. I think
Oh, you're welcome. This was
that,
fun.
yeah, so much fun, so much value. And, listeners, if you guys have any questions, feel free to message me, message Nicole. Nicole, if you could share with our listeners how they can find you.
Yeah, the best way to find me would be on Instagram. So that would be my handle is fit.bombshell.warriors. And yeah, just shoot me a message and be like, I listened to you on Anna's podcast, and then I'll know where you came from. And we can have a conversation if you're like, yeah, I'm having period problems and I don't want to take birth control and I'd love to explore other options, then I'd be
Yeah.
happy to have a conversation with you. But yeah, Instagram's going to be easiest because it's a public profile versus my Facebook. So
Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you again, Nicole. And I hope that you and everyone listening has a great rest of their day.